All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Happy Friday. I brought Pixie with me.
What's up, dudes?
So let's see if you see us, say hi. That way, how we always know. It's a good way to always just to test to make sure we're fine. And not seeing a comment yet. Hey, yep, somebody sees us. Hey, how's it going? So today we're going to do two things. One, we're going to do our QA. Pixie's going to help me. Do you want to be Steve or Pixie?
Call me whatever you want. If you're more natural to call me Pixie, fine. But because I think that's what you generally call me. Yeah. But Steve, if you're not comfortable with that, whatever you want to do, I'm good.
Fair enough. So we're both going to do QA today, answer some questions, do some cool stuff for those of us that are not out there Black Friday shopping, because that's just not my bag. I'm not fighting the crowds for stuff.
I didn't leave the house today.
Yeah, me neither. Not doing it. And then real quick, I always give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to the funding that supports the live QAs every month. It's Bradulist, Zachary Rowe, Michael Newman, Bruce Garris, Jeff Howes, We Backtracks, John Jex, Michael Shea, Justin Maybe, David Madison, and Lawrence Petros from LPD Pedals. All of you guys help keep this going, and I appreciate that every week. It really gets some help to get some stuff done to get this going every week. So I appreciate that. And everybody else on Patreon and supports with t-shirts and everywhere else. You guys support, viewers just watching. All that is huge support that drives what we do, right? So,
absolutely.
So, all right. So let's look for a good question, and then we'll throw them back and forth, and we'll see who wants to answer. Okay, first one is motor amps. Hi, do you know about 65 amps? Pixie, what do you know about 65 amps? Anything?
Not a lot, other than it's modeled in my Viper. It sounds pretty good in that. So the Viper has a 65 model, and that sounds great. It seems to be a cleaner on a sort of like a I think like a Morgan style. At least that's the one they're using.
They're not high gain by any means.
They're not a high gain amp, from what I could tell. It sounds beautiful though.
I know that I think the owner or one of the owners, his name's Bob, and I know that they love 16 ohms. It was weird. He was the first amp builder that I ever talked to who had a preference. You know what I mean? Which I guess maybe that makes sense, because Mesa Boogie likes to set almost all their stuff for 8 ohms. When they can, you know what I mean? So he was explaining to me one time, the guy who runs 65 amps, who owns it, he's a huge transformer nut. So he's really into transformers. He has like this huge collection of transformers, and he really believes that the transformers in an amp make a big difference. And funny story was, a year or two ago, I did a video, is your small amp loud enough? And I had a live band use small amps on a stage to see if it was loud enough. And what was great about that was the amps that were loudest, what we learned from that, which we didn't learn it until after the videos were done, you know what I mean, in retrospect. Mm-hmm. But the amps that were the loudest, it had nothing to do with price. It had to do with how well the transformer was made. If they had a really good output transformer, so he might have something there with that theory. You know what I mean? That a nice transformer makes a difference. So that's what I know about 65 amps. I think my buddy Matt has the little Elvis. He loves it. Probably like Pixie will probably agree with me. They're expensive. So that means...
it's in the boutique category.
Yeah, so local shops don't carry them, so it's hard to come about them. And sadly enough, in my life experience now with NAMM, is I don't consider NAMM experiencing product anymore. You know what I mean?
Well, you have to fight the constant sound pressure. It's a battle and you can't win because by definition, you're not allowed to turn it up, right? By rule.
Yes.
So everybody runs at the limit, and you can't run any louder than the limit. And you're fighting this constant sound pressure that's just pushing whatever you're trying to listen to back into its face, right? Like the sound's trying to come out of the amp, and NAMM is just shoving it back, and you're like, wait a second. And you're like, I really can't hear this. The people with the soundproof booths do better. But even that's not, you hear so many loud amps in there because people are trying to crank it up and hear what the amp sounds like, just because NAMM is such. Now, let's see what happens this year.
Yeah,
Right.
with
Have you seen the floor plan yet? Have you looked over
Yeah,
the
I
floor
did. I
plan?
looked it over
Yeah.
because you know it's funny. This is going to be the first year, and I mean I've been gone. This is going to be my 14th or 15th NAMM. I'm lost. Like I'll be walking around like a person who's never been there before because nothing's where it was. It's all moved around, but it looks laid out really cool.
Yeah, well, they've been trying for a while to move everybody, and it was hard because people like their spot, right? They've been there for years. They like, this is where people know us, and we don't want to move too much. But now that they opened up the North Wing, they're like, listen, this is it. This is the moment where we get to reorg the whole place.
Right.
So if you are in this category, you're in this hall. And if you're this category, you're in this hall. So drums are in this hall, keyboards are in this hall, accessories are here. Digital and electronics seem to have moved to the new hall.
Right.
That seems to be digital or new media or whatever you want to call it. And guitars are in the giant last hall on the main floor. The one with the what is that? Food court, like way down in the corner, right? In that back corner. I think that's where all the guitars are going. So it's that hall D, I think.
Yeah.
And if you look there, that's where they all are. My friend was very lucky. He was sort of guitars, sort of accessories, and he convinced them to stay kind of where he was, but he was able to go around the corner onto the main aisle. So he is directly across from where like Addario used to be.
Oh yeah, okay.
And Addario is now in D right up front, which I don't know if people are too crazy about that, because once you get through that main door, people tend to stay more towards the middle and less towards the edge of the show. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting show.
It's
to say the least.
Well, like I said, it's going to be, yeah, like I said, it's going to be the first time since, forever that I'm just don't know where anything is, but I don't know. It looks like it's going to work out better, but it'll probably be horrible the first day for everybody.
And I think to bring it around to where we were, you can imagine how the drum room is going to be now.
Yeah. It's going to be,
right. And how the guitar rooms are going to be. Downstairs still seems to be the youngins.
Yeah. Yeah, the bottom mezzanine. If you guys don't know what we're talking about in NAMM, there's essentially 4 floors, but 3 floors that pertain to what we care about. The basement, which is the lower mezzanine, the main floor, which is the biggest floor, and then the top floor, which has, Fender and all those guys. And the basement has been where all the new guys go. Some people stay there, like Breedlove stays down there. They've been around for a while, but mostly it's new companies and small companies. So it's the most people agree that's the hall where you're going to see something cool and different.
Yeah.
So, and for those of you that go to NAMM, most of the time, I don't know if you know this, Pixie, because you go on a different pass, so you get in early. The lower mezzanine, you can go in 30 minutes before the main show.
Even with a regular pass?
Even with a regular pass. You just can't go upstairs. So what happens is the show starts at 10, but at 9:30, if you go downstairs, you go in there, you can hang out there for 30 minutes and check that out before the show starts.
The escalator upstairs.
Yeah, and then take the escalator. They just won't. So if you guys are going to the show for whatever reason, your first time, just so you know, 30 minutes you get to crack the bottom floor first. I usually do that just because, might as well walk around. But this year it'd be interesting. I have a press pass, so I'm allowed in at 8 a.m. So
that's crazy. I would think that they wouldn't let you in till 10 because you're press.
Yeah, I don't know.
They let you in 2 hours early because I can get in early, but I have an exhibitor pass.
Yeah,
and it's so you can work on the booth right up until the moment you open.
The press pass almost. I could be understanding it wrong, but I don't think so. I read it pretty clearly. But just in case, I have my regular pass too. So, there you go. The next question was, by the way, Lawrence Petros made a comment. He was saying the iron in the Transformers makes a huge difference. That makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I got to trust you on that.
Yeah. And then there was a question. I want to go right back to it. I saw it, and it was about Charvels. It was asking what we thought of Charvels.
I generally like
Here it is. Yeah, it says Daniel Perkins wants to know, guys, have you tried any Charvel signature models? What do you think? Oh, so you asked about signatures.
Yeah, well, I did. I tried the Jake E. Lee.
Right.
Right. And it was fine, just a straight up Charvel with a all of his appointments. And I tried the real nice one, the Guthrie.
Yeah.
And that was nice. that was a memorable experience. I was like, oh, I could get used to this. That was a really nice guitar. Beautiful feeling neck, beautiful feeling, just the whole vibe of the instrument was really nice. Simple, a little over the top with the wood, figuring, but sort of brought down with node locking system and, a sort of a simpler, trem system. And compared to other Charvels, I mean, what Charvel doesn't have a locking nut, most of them are in the locking nut territory. But no, I really dug the instrument. I was impressed.
I've done the same thing. I played the Jakey Lee. I played the new Jakey Lees at the Summer NAMM. I've owned 2 of the Warren D Martinis, and I've played the Guthrie Govan. The only thing I will say about the Charvel artist guitars is, other than the Guthrie Govan, they all kind of feel the same. Like,
yeah, that's why I couldn't really say much about the Jakey Lee other than it felt like a Charvel, but with his color and his style and his appointments. Although I think, if I remember correctly, it was a glossy neck. It wasn't a satin neck, and so there's a difference.
Right. Yeah, it's subtle, but it's, I think that's normal with most lines. The artist model's not much, doesn't feel much different. But right. Charvels, one of the things I liked about Charvels and always have is they have a consistency in the way they feel. In fact, I think when people talk about old Charvels pre-Fender, they feel different than the new Charvels. But what's funny is, regardless of those two dramatically different feelings, they both are consistent within themselves.
Right.
And on a side note, I think you probably came to the same conclusion as me. Another thing with Charvel is, man, I hate to say it, but the made in Mexico and Japan ones, the affordable series, they feel fantastic to me. I don't play them and think that the American ones are much, much superior.
Oh, absolutely. And Bobby had an American Charvel he brought over here. I could have got that for really short money. But at the time, I just couldn't justify he caught me at like Christmas, and he was like, "Hey, you want to buy that Charvel?" It's like $6.25, which for a USA Charvel is really cheap. And I should have just jumped on it. And I was like, "Oh, I don't have the money right now, And but comparing that, he later came over with a Japanese one, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? I think I like the USA one a little better. This is nice, but you can definitely feel a little bit of a difference. And it's not that it's a bad guitar, but it's just different." Right, that's all. Right. And then we got the Mexican made ones, and I said, well, we're kind of coming full circle. This is more like your first one that you brought over, and less like the Japanese one. So I think they sort of went back to formula when they were doing the Mexi ones, and those have been great. I regret not getting that USA one because it would be nice to have a USA Charvel, but that was a Fender made USA. Obviously, it wasn't right. An old USA made Charvel. Those can be worth some money. But the Mexi ones are hitting it out of the park as far as I can see. Pretty much the same identical guitar to the EVH with different colors and labels.
I agree. And I think the EVH ones made them better, because the problem I have now, I don't know which one you have. I like the new, but do you have the new ones with the spindle truss rod exposed, or do you have to take your neck off?
I get to take my neck off.
See, I hate that. So once they came out with the spindle truss rod system like the EVH ones.
Right. I just looked. I'm right. I got to take my neck off.
Here's, it's like when I interviewed
I got like a half dozen guitars like that, though. I'm kind of used to it. When you do a restring, you do a check, and you say, well, am I pulling the neck off today to do a quarter turn either way, What you do, you got to do.
Yeah.
But not to cut you off, but
no, you know what it is? The irony of it is that the one you have, I'm pretty sure the Floyd sits against the body, right? It's not recessed.
It's not recessed, but it doesn't sit down against the body. It's parallel with the body, but it's not. It has no recess.
So the funny part is, I like the Charvels without the recessed body, and I like the spindle truss rod. And ironically, when they did the spindle truss rod, that's when they recessed the Floyd Rose. So, but I prefer.
I don't. Yeah.
I
had to double check.
Yeah.
But I don't. No, right. No recess.
No recess. So it's just preference. Nathan says he's working on trying to get his NAMM badge. He works at PRS. He's a buffer. Sander, he works on the guitar. So if you get a PRS, that guy is definitely, he's the guy that makes it smooth and nice. Right. He says, what booths are we excited to check out? What are you excited to check out at NAMM this year?
Oh geez, I was just going over a list. I want to you know, I always go see all the main manufacturers. So anyone on the main list, you know, Gibson, Fender, Ibanez, Schecter, you know, ESP, Orange, Marshall, Kiesel, any of the brands that have sort of been around for a while. I know Kiesel hasn't ended that brand name, but I think of them more as an extension of Carvin and Kiesel.
Right.
They've been around since the 70s, as far as I'm concerned. I always check out those booths. I always check out, you know, all the main players, but the smaller people, and it's funny because he's got actually one of the biggest booths there is Warwick Framus, right? Who I haven't really spent a lot of time in prior years at, you know. Obviously I'll be doing more this year. And I want to check out, interestingly enough, Dan Electro, because they're announcing something new that he couldn't quite tell me about. And so he's like, come by the booth. He goes, we got something new coming out. And I want to check out PRS. Because that's another booth that could be sometimes kind of hard to get into and to be a little busy in there. And I wouldn't fight the crowd sometimes to go through there and I'd just say, oh, whatever. But I'll make a point to get through PRS this year and maybe go to the press conference and be a little bit more engaged than prior years. A lot of years I'm pretty winded by 11 a.m. I'm already looking at sitting, take a break. Because it's like 5 football fields of walking, right? Each one of those rooms is about the size of a football field. You know?
Yeah.
So I also, you know, as far as like pedals, I go to all the usual suspects, right? Earthquaker, if they're going to be there. I think they are. Strymon, I think, is going to be downstairs again. I always go to the Duncan booth because they always have somebody good playing, you know, like one event a day. It's always someone like amazing, like Nick Johnson or something. But I think now Nick's not with them any longer, and neither is Keith Merrow. So who knows who they're going to have coming through this year.
I think I'm excited. I'm always excited every year for the same booths. I'm always excited for Ibanez to see what they did this year.
Yeah, agreed.
There's always a leak about what it is. This year, I know one of the things I think is going to happen is they're reissuing again the RG 550s in the desert yellow, road flare red, the neon purple.
The 30th anniversary. We did the 25th, but that wasn't enough. 5 years later, we find ourselves at the 30th.
And as this happens, I laugh every time I go every year because as I get older, it's like I become more crotchety. It's like I just want to go there and see it and touch it so I can go, yeah, it doesn't feel the same. Oh, they got this wrong. Oh, this is the wrong knob. You know, I don't really intentionally do that, but I find that when I look back retrospect, that's what I was doing. It's so I'm always excited to see their stuff. Mostly, the hard part of that question is, what are you excited to see? I'm really excited to see what I didn't know I was gonna see.
Yeah, see, it's hard because you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you get there and you see something new and you're like, "Ermager," and you had no idea that was coming around. Or maybe you read about it. Someone got an exclusive a week before. You saw it on some website. Someone got a, Guitar World or whatever broke the, the story. You'll see it out there. But, a lot of times that stuff's pretty well kept under wraps until the day of the show. And usually they try to send out their own press release to give them, you'll see, Peavy, put out their own press release. I always check out Peavy's booth too.
Yeah. And then the next question comes from Bobby. It says, Phil, do you think it's right to sell any gear you are getting free from companies? ? So I'm going to ask you too, Pixie. My answer is simple. First of all, that's tough. It's a tough question to answer. What I will say is this, and I like this question because there is something, I don't know if you've had this happen to you. Steve, but it has happened to me many times. I have companies that send me product, and most of the time this happens, it's unsolicited. In other words, it just shows up. You know what I mean? They'll send it to my P.O. box, and it'll basically say, here, check this out, Phil, and tell us, they're not asking for a video, just like if you like it, do a video. But I've had them put stipulations, but if you don't like it, send it back. Don't give it away and don't donate it. That's what it says.
That's ridiculous because, if they're sending it to you unsolicited,
right,
it's pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, thrown away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a gift, and you can't attach strings to gifts. Okay?
I understand.
Except for a wedding ring. It's the only one.
my thing is, I'm afraid sometimes to think with this. So answer the question even more intensely. I'm afraid sometimes to sell stuff that I buy that I review. In fact, this year I sold almost nothing I bought this year that I didn't decide to keep. The stuff I didn't decide to keep, I haven't even sold it yet. I usually make it available to my patrons, but I haven't been doing that because as the channel's grown, I get nervous what that might do to the company unintentionally. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't dislike it, you're just not using it. So it used to be, I'm not using this thing, might as well get rid of it and use that money towards something else, right? Now, sometimes I think about the fact that now it's going to be out there that I got rid of it. Why did I get rid of it? Is there something negative to the company? And I'm not saying I don't. I'm just saying I think about that stuff. So much less free, I think about when I buy it, what kind of effects it has when you sell stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't take any money ever to review a product.
Nope, I've never taken a dime either.
Yeah, so a lot of times you kind of consider the product your payment, quote unquote. Right. Yeah. Which is ridiculous because especially when you're getting a $39 or a $59 pedal,
right.
I mean, it's not worth, the 2 or 3 hours of your time that you're going to take to put it together. But that's not about that. It's about building your channel and providing products and giving you something to have a video about. It's like, it's better than nothing. So
plus it's cool as hell that this gets stuff.
Yeah. I think, I'm trying to think if I've ever sold anything. The only thing I ever sold was I had 3 Fuego amps.
Right.
And I sold one of them because I didn't need 3. Right. At some point it gets a little, he's like, try this out. He's like, yeah. We changed the circuit and that. Here's the next version. Right. Yeah. That's not the release version. Forget. Right. Don't do a video on that one. Right. Here's the final version. Now you can do your video. So he doesn't want the other ones back,
Right.
And I think I had 2 Fuegos and a Fuego X. And I liked the Fuego X and I liked the second Fuego. The first one, which was a prototype, was a little dark. And he definitely lightened it up when he got to the second one. So I wound up selling that on Craigslist for next to nothing. Because he blows his stuff out on the reverb.
Yeah.
And,
I know.
It's like, it's not like you're making, so I got a couple of $100, for the amp. We're not talking a ton of money here. And that's after going through, 3 prototypes and doing a full video, multiple videos on it. So it's like we earn our money through the revenue stream. And that's how I sort of see it.
That's how I see it too.
But nobody in the industry, no giant magazine that's charging these people advertising and all that stuff, they don't ever pay to review stuff. I will do that if I just want to go out and buy a guitar and I just bring it home and do a review on it and say, hey, I just bought this guitar,
Right.
But for the most part, if something's been given to me, I pretty much still have it. I did a pedal blowout a couple of years ago because I had a whole bunch of pedals I didn't want, and I sold them to a dealer at next to nothing, right? Just so because I knew he had to mark him up, and he was like, it's just one of those things that he was a retailer and a friend, and I said, oh yeah, I can give you a wholesale price on them, and he got them basically for wholesale, maybe even 25% below wholesale. He got a really good deal. But whatever.
A lot of the stuff I get for free, I do giveaways to the patron thing. I'm trying to cut the middleman out now when companies are approaching me now, because I get so many companies now that approach me and the first thing they say is, how much do you charge to do a video? And I don't have a problem. I've been saying this for a while. I don't have a problem with anybody who charges to do videos. That's their business, and this is you know.
I think for me, it just gets into a weird ethical place where you're feeling, you know.
Yes, for me, it's not. Yeah, for me, it's.
Well, you know the secret about magazines, right?
No, what is it?
Well, you don't get you're not reviewed unless you take an ad.
Oh, of course.
There's no negative reviews in magazines.
Right.
They're always glowing, or if they're not glowing, they're factual. That means they didn't like it, but they're just going to list everything that you get with it.
Right.
You know, so they're either glowing or they're factual. They try to lighten it up, but it's only because they took an ad in the magazine that they even got the review. So is that paid review? Right. Starts blurring lines.
It's tough. Like I said, so but here, the good news is this is just my opinion. The fact that just like you and I, if you struggle with the ethics of it, then you're probably not doing anything unethical. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
You know, I haven't,
you know, there's a line out there for judges. It's called an appearance of impropriety. Not that any impropriety happened. Not that that's it, that you actually did something. It just looks bad, right? Just the appearance of impropriety. So like if the judge finds out that the prosecutor is like his son-in-law, and you're like, well, we don't know for certain that he's making decisions based on the fact that the prosecutor is his son-in-law, but you know, it has an appearance of impropriety, even if there is none. So we don't let it happen. You know, that's a conflict of interest, and you're out, right? They would find someone else to do the prosecuting in that case. So, or defending for that matter, you know, pick a side, either one, it would be a conflict of interest. So that sort of appearance is the sort of standard I try to go by to say, like, you know, you don't want to look like you're taking money to do reviews.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is the people that offer me money don't really have guitar related stuff. It's like cosmetics and like stupid. I'm like, have you even looked at my channel? It's like, this must be a form letter. There's no way you looked at my channel.
Yeah. And most of the stuff I get is generic.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think with the old gear, what I tend to do is keep it around. It makes for good props. I got every one of the Panama amps except for that one. I got pretty much every pedal except for that first round, which I sold about 18 months ago. And that's it. I got everything else. I did sell a few guitars though, but these are guitars I bought and just realized I wasn't really playing them all that much.
Yeah, sometimes you have to thin it out. Jared Briggs says, the Dude Know Your Gear shirt is my favorite of the limiteds. So look at that, Pixie. You got to do a modeling there. Gotta make some noise.
And, oh yeah, check 1 2. Dude, know your gear.
They if you guys don't know what that is, when we were at GitCon, I was in the elevator with Phil X, and I was wearing my shirt every day, of course, right? And he said, "What's with the shirt?" So I told him the story about how where the dudes came from. And I said, yeah, and I changed it up. And we were talking about shirts, you know, monetizing and selling shirts, you know, and he was saying, yeah, he's like, so anyway, so in this discussion, he says, well, you know, I'll trade you a shirt or I want one. Right. And I said, oh, I'll make you your own. Right. I said, I'll make you your own, you know, shirt. And then when I was flying back with all that free time in the air, I started drawing up ideas going, oh, I should make a bunch of these, you know, for everybody that was at GitCon that I interacted with, and try to come up with something fun, you know, and funny, right? So that's what I did. What's cool is, and I wanted it to be special, right?
Right.
So, Steve and I. So if you guys are interested, there is a link to get one. You can get the Tone King one or the Pixie Licks one. If you guys want one of these limited edition shirts, we're going to literally, they will be limited. I'm not saying we'll never do them again. I'm just saying, I promise it won't be next month or in the next couple months. You know what I mean? Because here's why. What I asked these guys was, I said, hey, if you want to do this, we will do it together. We'll split the funds equally. And then we decide, you know, when we do it. And some of the channels, you know, they're not, I don't want to say they're not interested. It's a lot of them. I didn't even ask them if they want to do it because I have a less of I have a more of a business acquaintance relationship with them, and I thought it'd be a nice thing to do for them. So some of the shirts won't even be available, but like I said, I'll show you guys all the shirts I made. I made 10 of them, different ones from the GitCon interaction. And but if you want one, you can get a Pixie one, the Dude one, or the Tone King one. And then I actually, what's funny was I told Steve I was wearing one this Friday, right? I told you that, and you said, oh, I'm wearing one too. And I said, oh, we're going to look like twins. And then funny story, I don't have yours.
What?
Yeah, mine hasn't shown up yet. And what's funny is because I made them, what order they shipped out, yours should have been here by now. But it's funny, even though yours got to Boston, mine hasn't got to me. So I don't have yours yet. It's still on the way. So there's different ones.
Yeah.
And
so 2 things. Someone in the comments said, I probably got the makeup thing because of the name Pixie Licks, which actually is pretty logical. That's actually probably not that far off thinking, right?
Right.
Right. So again, just another reason to dump that name. And secondly, someone was asking me if I still have the diamond. Of course, yeah, I still have the diamond guitar.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's funny. I was gonna buy the diamond on the Black Friday deal, the one I wanted, and it was been it was out of stock, and so I decided to go with a different color. And then when I clicked this morning, it was sold out. So I should have done it last night. I was waiting for the thing to click over. I almost
bought the latest iPad. They had them for $249, and which is pretty cheap for a brand new iPad, And I was just like, you know what? I just never will use it. It's like I'll use it for about a month, and then it will sit there. I was just like, meh. It felt like on a whim. A little too whimsical,
Right. Bobby, I'm going to say Lope says, I see you guys getting boxes and boxes of cables. How many do you honestly need? Well, I don't know. I'll speak for myself. I personally have boxes and boxes and boxes of unopened brand new guitar cables. But so I know what he's talking about. He's talking Hosa.
Yeah, I didn't get a ton from Hosa. I think I got one of each. He gave me I
got one of each, like a sample.
Yeah. So he sent me like one of the top ones, one of the medium ones. He sent me a short one. It's not like he sent me like a dozen shorts. I could probably ask him and he would send them to me. He's like super nice.
Yeah, they're super nice.
Yeah, but I didn't. What I did do is when we were at GitCon and they had that giant plastic pickle barrel of little mini cables out there. I reached in there and grabbed a fistful.
I got a bunch of those too. In fact, I think they're up
in my backpack. Who wouldn't? I mean, they were like, take as many as you want. And I'm like, okay.
I was counting. I was like, okay, to get one pedal to one pedal. I was like a board of 8 pedals. I need this many cables. I got. But to answer your question, how many cables you need? You always need a lot of cables. I have never felt like,
what the hell am I going to do with all these cables?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, I wish it wasn't true, but you go through cables. It's just how it goes. But I understand what you're saying. Pretty much every major social media person got a huge assortment from Hosa. I think it was personally a great idea from Hosa.
I agree.
They're just trying to get their name out there. They know we'll use this stuff. It's just an easy thing to do. Everybody understands the concept of this. You know what I mean? Get your stuff out there. It's a tough market. You can't have all these articles. You can't see what companies like Gibson and everybody's going through and not realize it's a tough market. And you can't be naive. When you're looking at these, let's say that there's 100 gear review channels out there. There's 100 gear review channels creating something like 30 million views of content a month. These companies just would like to put and it's very likely, I'm almost being sarcastic, it's very likely that the people watching this stuff are guitar players. So, in fact, it's almost guaranteed. So you understand, they're just trying to get,
they see it as the new media. They probably went to a seminar.
Yeah.
And devised a plan.
On
how to use modern media like YouTube and social media to promote your company.
Yes.
And a guy says, get in with YouTubers, get a big presence on Facebook and Instagram, hire somebody like the guy at Hosa, Dylan, who reaches out to everybody, and you have a point of contact. And I think it's been good for them in terms of brand recognition. I don't know that Hosa really needed it. That company, that's one of the oldest companies I can think of. We carried them in 1987, 1988. We had a whole wall full of Hosa cables in both our stores, in Boston, our two music stores. So, but they're probably seeing it as a way to keep their name out there.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. It made sense. I think it made sense. Think about this. I can tell you what it did for me, and it probably did the same thing for Steve. It made me feel very good that they just sent me I know I mean, I'm not dumb. I saw they sent it to everybody, but the fact that I got included means that they saw my channel, they paid attention, they put me in the list, so to speak. So, I think I said this right before I went to GitCon. I needed a Hosa cable. I didn't call them for a free little adapter. I went down to the local store and got one. But I could have got one on Amazon, some no-name brand one for $1.68, but I went down and paid the $4.99 for theirs to show them loyalty. You know what I mean? To go, hey, yeah.
I was using them just because I liked Hosa. It's a name I had known because we carried them at the music store. So it was a brand I trusted. So when I would go to a place around here called You Do It Electronics. They're on 128 up in Needham. And so I'd go over to You Do It, and they have everything. They're an electronic supply store, so they have a lot of raw parts in there. And they have a whole wall of cables, and I knew I could go and get a cable. Well, when I got there, they'd become a Hosa deal. They had a giant Hosa. I said, well, this is where I'm shopping. And I worked off of there, and they had every cable I needed. I needed like 2/4-inch mono that move into an 1/8-inch stereo, and it needed to be at least 18 feet long and be able to send the signal. And they had it.
Yeah, of course.
And that's how I plug my camera in. I assign the outputs on my Focusrite to these two outputs. I say, the monitor out goes to these two outputs, and that runs out directly into the cam.
Oh, okay.
And I record direct to cam. Saves a big step in having to go and add the audio later and clap and sync it all up and all that crap. I can't be bothered.
I don't clap. I use my guitar. I hit the strings. You know what I mean? If I'm holding the guitar and then that spike.
Oh, yeah, right. Because you spike it with the string hit.
Just it spikes it.
Right.
Fresh Cream, Cream Fresh Cream says, hey guys, what's your favorite fret wire? And then he wants to know what's fret wires on my Copper Strat. My Copper Strat has a medium jumbo, which is the standard fret wire they put on all the American standard Strats. You have a fret? I'm going to ask Pixie, and then I'm going to say something too. Pixie, do you have a favorite fret wire?
I couldn't name it by name, like 65 or whatever. They have all those different numbers. I don't have those memorized. I tend to like a jumbo on Ibanez.
Right. Oh yeah.
Whatever reason, maybe because
jumbo wide. Ibanez jumbo wide. Yeah,
maybe because it's such a small neck profile. I like the larger frets to just give a little bit more spacing off the top of that neck because it is so shallow.
Right.
And I tend to like medium jumbo on just about everything else. And I think that's what comes on my American Standard. Is that on the American Standard Telly and Strat? Are they
American Standard is medium jumbo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Medium jumbo. So those two seem to be the two. I did recently get a 65 Japanese reissue Strat with the bound neck that has the vintage frets.
Right.
You notice it. They're a little bit trickier to play. It requires a little bit more precision. They're not as forgiving. But you learn to work with them.
I prefer medium jumbo, and I like the new American Professional Strats have vintage tall. So they're vintage fret wire, but they're taller.
Right.
And that's all I really care about. I've never really noticed the width, like how Ibanez uses a jumbo wide fret, a wider stance fret. I really don't notice that stuff. I just notice height because obviously when I'm bending, your finger is either rubbing the fretboard or it's not. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying not to rub the fretboard. And sometimes when vintage fret wires on guitars and they're done right, they're really good. But sometimes they're not. A perfect example, I had a Gretsch that I loved. I loved it. It sounded great. It looked cool, but it had vintage fret wire on it, and I just couldn't play it because it was like playing right on the fretboard.
Right. Almost like what Gibson was doing with the fretless Wonder. Remember that? They used to like sort of a late 70s thing where they would really get those frets really low.
Yes.
Right. So, and it was by design. They said people wanted lower frets. So it'd be a rather shallow fret. And it had mixed reviews. Some people really loved it and they really went for it, but other people didn't. I find I don't like that. I don't like it when they're not tall. And yet, like you said, it doesn't have to be jumbo. It just has to be tall so you can get some distance off the fretboard so that when you're using a vibrato or you're bending a note, it's like you're an ice skate on ice, right? And you're not a foot dragging across the ground, right? Because when the tip of your finger hits the fretboard, that's a lot more stickiness and friction than that string just rubbing over that metal bar. That's a lot less friction.
Yeah.
And you notice it. It's subtle, but it's kind of cumulative. Like, oh my God, this guitar is really fighting me. And it's because you're hitting the fretboard a bit more with your fingertips.
Yeah, I freaked out, when I got the Framus, the Panthera behind me. So I got it, and it shows up, and I pull it out, play it, and I'm like, oh, it's amazing. And then all of a sudden I just noticed, like, I don't know, something didn't feel right. I'm playing it. It has vintage fret wire, has small fret wires on it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and what's weird is, so, we talked about this like with Hosa. What happened with the Framus was, remember, you thought I was getting that green one, that blue-green?
Because you had it with Tone King out in that interview, and I said, well, that's the one he got. So when I went over to pick out a guitar, I purposely didn't pick up the blue one, and I picked up the purple one because I didn't want to play the guitar you bought. And You told me you bought the Framus, and I just assumed it. And the other one was a Panthera, but it was like a Panthera 1. And I think you said, I bought the Panthera. And you might have said 2, but I didn't put it together.
Yeah, well, what happened? This is what happened. So when we went to Hans to tell him that we want to buy the guitars, I already knew I was going to buy a bass. This is something that was like a lifelong dream, to go to Warwick Factory and buy a Warwick bass. I mean, literally, I can tell you from the first time I've been, since '99, I've been wanting to do that. So that's not a lifetime, but that's a long time.
Sure.
When I do this, like the old handshake agreement, people using a handshake instead of a contract.
Sure.
I call it reciprocal, being reciprocal, you do for me, I do for you, vice versa. Right. I tend to, quo. Yes, I try to hope for the best a lot of times. So what happened was, when I went to Hans and told him what I wanted, I didn't ask, we didn't dictate, anything. We just asked. And so what happened was, we said, hey, these are the demo guitars. Is there a special price for the demo guitars? Anything like that? You're trying to, this is a man who flew you there, who welcomed you, who's, what I mean? You're like, oh, and by the way,
what else do I get?
Yeah, what else do I get? Right. So, but realistically, you're also trying not to be, silly to yourself. I don't know if silly is the right word. In other words, I'm not trying. That's something that at the NAMM show, I bought a lot of stuff at the NAMM show. Yeah. You get it.
You're trying to be a savvy businessman, but at the same time, you don't want to anger the guy.
Yeah.
By
well, and I don't want to aggressive.
And
I don't want to disrespect him, because I think respect was due for sure. So I basically went with the intention of, and I knew what I was doing when I opened my mouth. Whatever he said, I was going to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'm not going to lie. When I was like, okay, I'm going to get one of those guitars right there. So what's my price? You know what I mean? And so when he gave us a deal and he took care of us on the demo guitar and stuff, what happened to me was, I went back and I started getting guilty, because I knew in my head I wanted this purple one, and I thought about that blue-green one, right?
Right.
But I know better. I knew they were the same price. So that's how it worked out. They were the same price. Either one I got was going to cost me the same. But what ended up happening was, I started thinking about going, this is really more of their guitar. The other one's a Les Paul style guitar. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is like their custom 24. It's their shape. Their new affordable line of import guitars they're going to releasing this year at the NAMM show has that shape in it. In fact, that the guitars feel the same. And then I thought about the viewers that will be watching this. This model is available from a $600 price on up. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You know, you're thinking, so you start thinking about it, you know, going, okay, do I really want to get a guitar that no one can get unless they get this crazy expensive one? You know what I mean?
Right.
And he won't get a whole lot of marketing out of it because it's a model that to most people will just assume I'm playing a Les Paul or a PRS or something like that, right?
Right.
So that's why I switched last minute and I go, you know what, I'm going to go with the purple one, because I figured that was better for everybody. I love both guitars. I was happy no matter what. You know, both guitars were fantastic. But that's the way I did it that way.
Yeah. I guess the purple is more their proprietary shape, right?
Yeah. This is the Panthera is, because if you look at it, like I have it right now next to my Telly, you can see it's got like a Telly Les Paul mix vibe.
Right.
Yeah. And I plan, I'd be shocked if I don't. I plan to get their import version, the affordable one.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of people, I think it got confusing. A lot of people were talking about the price of this guitar and they're like, it's really expensive. And I'm like, it is, but you gotta understand, this is like their private stock PRS. It's expensive because of all the aesthetic things added to it.
Oh, I mean, it's almost like they grind their own metal.
Yes.
That's how they have their own foundry out back. I mean, that's how crazy they get with creating stuff. So that's why the tuning pegs are all handmade.
Yeah.
The plate covering the truss rod is all handmade.
Yep.
I mean, all the panels on the back are handmade. I mean, they really, the attention to detail, like you say, it's private stock, top of the line.
Right.
I mean, that's their reference model.
And then,
to basically say, this is what we can do, but we also have stuff that's more affordable, and you can get this level of care. Maybe not all the little accoutrements like handmade, tuner buttons and handmade plates in the back, but because we're saving so many steps by taking those things away, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, and the guitar, if you don't get those aesthetics. I mean, the guitars, you can get the same exact guitar without some of those wood pieces and aesthetic stuff. It's half the price. I mean, it still doesn't make it doesn't make it cheap by any means, but it's but like I said, I wouldn't have done that. And I think I'm very clear with this, and you could understand, you could relate too, because we've talked about this in price of guitars. I wouldn't have bought a guitar like that or thought about even going after a guitar like that, except for that was an experience.
Right.
I mean, it's not just a guitar to me. It's also like a souvenir, a memento of an event that I went to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
In 20 years from now, I'll still be thinking of, like, when I see that guitar, I'll remind myself, like, oh yeah, Mark Newkirchen and GitCon. And so here's a question from Mikey Newman. Says, hey, have you guys tried any of the Duesenberg guitars? Recently tried the Mike Campbell signature. It was amazing. Thinking about buying one. You tried to do it, Duesenberg?
I don't think I have. Now I'm trying to think, because a buddy of mine, I may have tried, believe it or not, I may have tried a Duesenberg, but it was a lefty, because I have a friend who has a massive guitar collection, north of 100 guitars. He could be even closing in on 200 for all I know. I mean, it's an illness, but he's got like a lot of guitars, but he's lefty. So when I go there, I can try them out, but I have to hold them upside down. And believe it or not, even just holding it, you really can't, other than an asymmetrical neck, you can really get a feel for the neck. As long as the neck is symmetrical, you can sort of get a feel for it. And I could have sworn he had one or two Duesenbergs there. And I think I tried a couple out, and they were nice. I'm trying, there's a bunch with German names like Hagstrom and Duesenberg and Strandberg, and I think he had all of them.
All the Bergs.
All the Bergs. He had all the Bergs. But other than that, I can't legitimately say, I mean, I can make a story up if you want, but I can't legitimately say that I have a distinctive memory of saying, oh yes, I did play that, and this is what I think of it. Other than him, and I'm pretty sure it was a Duesenberg, but again, it was a lefty. I'm just going around. It's one out of literally a couple of hundred guitars, and I'm checking them out for a few seconds each.
I like them. I've worked on a bunch. Two of my good friends both own one, and they love them. My thing is, somebody asked a question like this before, and I really thought about it, like, why haven't I, really tried one? Obviously I like the quality, but here's what it really is for me. Everything I think is a little bit of branding and marketing and, how you were, when you grew up, what you saw. To me, even though I know the quality is maybe superior to Gretsch, to me, a Gretsch guitar is that guitar. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I own some Gretches, and that's the problem with that. It's like, to me, when I play the Duesenbergs, I don't really find them dramatically so much different than what I have when I have a Gretsch guitar. And even if somebody say, well, they're better or they're this, that's fine, but they're not really different. You know what I mean?
Right. It's I kind of feel that way about Sir. It's like, I love Sir. They play really nice, but I can't help but think of a Strat. They're just so close to a Strat in looks.
Or an Ibanez.
And I'm such a fan of Strat. Right. Or an Ibanez, yeah.
No, I agree with you. I keep thinking about getting a Sir Classic. And
I mean, admittedly, they play like butter.
Yes.
As we like to say.
Well, and
no one's arguing with their quality. It's just that they're a pricey guitar.
And I think it's this is the thing I always find interesting about guitar players, is musicians, I play a Sir Classic, and it's $2,000 for that guitar. And I go, oh, this is better than my American Strat. It's definitely, it just plays better, sounds a little better, it's a little better. But then in my head I go, but this is two American Strats.
Right. That's hard to reconcile.
Right. So I think in my head going, I could sell both my Strats and get one Sir. But then you do that thing in your head, like, okay, and it would be one thing if I got rid of two things that weren't that good to get something that was good. It's get rid of two things that are really good to get something that's slightly better.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're
and for as nice as the Sir is, you wonder if the price really reflects that much of an increase in quality, or really just that much of an increase in time necessary to create, because they don't have the economies of scale that Fender has. Fender is just so good at cranking out guitars. They can do it at a price point because they just have the processes down.
Everybody's allowed to have a different opinion. That's why I like it when people can listen to other opinions and I get butthurt. I don't get butthurt when I hear other people's opinions. Expensive guitars are always a problem for communities like us. We always talk about guitars, and everybody has an opinion about whether or not, if they're worth it or they're not worth it. I've never argued that. I've always argued with expensive guitars. To me, expensive guitars are about availability, uniqueness. You know what I mean? To me, it's like, if you tell me a guitar company makes 5 guitars a year, well, then you don't have to tell me anything other than that. I already know the guitars are $6,000 a piece.
Right. Because how could you stay in business if they weren't?
Right. I mean,
how can you make 6 guitars a year and charge $4.99 a guitar?
Yeah, you can't. And there is something cool. And it's part of our generation branding. One of the things that rock stars had back then, and think about it, it's a really narrow time frame. If you look at Clapton, right? Look at Clapton. He plays a black Strat. Okay. Yeah, and Mark Knopfler plays a red Strat. You know what I mean? And Beck,
good-looking Strat. I'll give him that.
It is. And Jeff Beck is a surf green or a white Strat, probably white Strat. Right. Jimi Hendrix is a white Strat. This can go on and on for hours, right? Right. All the
Sunburst.
Yeah, but then there's a time where all of a sudden, like Eddie Van Halen and Vi, and I don't know. I'm saying a lot of.
Well, really, even Zakk Wylde with the bullseye.
I was going to say Zakk Wylde next.
Randy Rhoads with the polka dots.
Yeah, the guitars.
It became a medium for artwork.
And what's funny is, and then all of a sudden, those guitars were available to us.
Right.
We could have them. Like George Lynch had these guitars, right? And I don't want to stick to the 80s metal guys, but you get the idea. Everybody just all of a sudden had this guitar that was like, they didn't buy off the rack. That was special stuff. And I don't know if it's just, growing up then and staring at those guitar magazines for all your formative years. But to me, having guitars that no one else has is cool. Not in the, I drive a nice car cool. Isn't this a cool story? Like this crazy, because it doesn't have to be expensive. I sometimes like guitars that are unique just because,
Yeah, they got a story behind them. I used to say that about the Chinese Les Pauls. I'm like, a Gibson Les Paul is boring. Everyone has it. But when I pull this out, and I go, yeah, I bought this for $187 out of China. You've got a 30-minute conversation following after that, because it really are like, what? Get the hell out of here. I remember I had a reunion of the guys from the music store, and we came down here into the basement from the backyard through the little, cubby door, and and he saw, like, I had a couple of them lined up, and he goes, dude, man, look at you buying all the Les Pauls. I'm like, that's about $900 worth of guitars there. He's like, what? He goes, I would have never known. But, he's out of the business for a while. I think if you know anything about Gibson guitars, you'd look right at him and go, no, wait a second. This is not right about this, just from the weight alone. But like I said, it was just sort of like a unique thing. It was sort of a conversation starter. It was a little bit of weirdness. It was more interesting than, and it sort of answered the question, could it be good? The answer was mostly not. They were mostly crap, but some of them are cool. I like the Iomi SG, but again, would I ever spend $4,000 on a signature Iomi guitar? I can't see myself doing that, but I'll drop $300 on the copy and pull it out every Halloween.
Yeah.
Right?
It is funny how it all kind of works, right? In your head.
Yeah. Because it's like you want something that's a little bit more interesting than just the plain,
Yeah.
Right? Because guys like us, right, who are on our, right, not at the same time, but like our 100th, our 150th guitar, our 200th guitar in our lifetime.
Yeah.
After a while, you're like, okay, kind of seen it all. Show me something new. Show me something different. Something a little bit more of a conversation piece.
Yeah, because what's great is I think if you're fair and honest, we've all come to the conclusion that good guitars hit in a certain price point. Like you talk about the Squires you like that are $300.
Oh, those are killer guitars.
Yeah.
That's why I could never get the Chinese copy, because Fender does it better than they do. They literally beat them at their own game. So it was like mic drop from Fender, because those classic Vibe series, you had a couple.
Yeah.
They're outstanding.
Yeah. I can't get over how good they are.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, and again, you just want to talk about a conversation piece. You pull that guitar out and you say, this is a $400 guitar new, a $300 guitar used, and people look at it and they compare it to what we had 30 years ago, and comparing what $300 was 30 years ago versus today, time value of money. That 30 today compared to 30 years ago, that 300 isn't worth nearly as much money.
Right. But on the side note, so here's the thing, and I saw, that was a subject I thought was interesting. You were talking about that when you were on Johnny Bean's show the other day when I was watching it. What's
They're not
interesting?
the same dollars. We always compare dollars to dollar. They're not the same dollars.
But what's interesting about that is the thing that makes the guitar so good and so affordable also makes them less unique.
Right. Yeah. It's because of the tolerances.
Yeah.
They're so copied. It's a cookie cutter to each other.
Right.
It's both a testament to the perfection of manufacturing, but in some ways, right, it stifles. But the thing is like you were psyched when you got a good one, but not so much when you got a bad one. So they might be all more mediocre, but at least they're all mediocre.
Yeah. Carlos Lama said the other day you were wearing, he probably means me, music is when know your gear t-shirt. Yeah, it was guitars win t-shirt. Are you going to sell those? No, those are not going to be for sale. That's what I said. Sorry guys. Those so Tyler has one, and I got one, and that's what I was saying. In fact, that's how it's going to work. It is what it is. You know what I mean? I did this because I wanted to do something fun and special when I came back, and I did, and like I said, and you know what? And maybe never say never. Maybe Tyler will want to do something one day, like thing, campaign. The other thing to be aware of too is I don't want to overload everybody, even if they did. What am I gonna? You guys can't buy if you bought 10 shirts. You know what I mean? That adds up fast.
So one guy put on here about he says, is there a big difference between the American standard and the Mexi standard besides $500? I do think the components are a little better. I do think if you pulled out the bridge from each and like sort of held them in your hand,
the
you
bridges
probably
are different.
feel the one from the American series is a little nicer. And if you pulled the tuners out and sort of held them, you say, oh, these American tuners, these feel a little sturdier. These feel a little bit nicer. I'd say the hardware is the biggest difference. In terms of just tolerances, the guitars are going to be built to the same exacting tolerances, right? And the setups are done so well now that that's not really an issue. You're probably going to get, you think you get a thicker coat on the American? Certainly my American Deluxe feels like it's got a really different thick coat on it.
It's a different material. So I always start this with saying this. I always talk about 2008 forward, okay? Because it gets a little tricky before 2008. In 2008, Fender redesigned the Mexican Strat. Okay, so 2008 forward. So if it says MZ8 on it, Mexican 2008.
Yeah, and it's when they went from the solid satin neck to the satin with the gloss front on the headstock, and they went to like the 65 logo.
Yes.
Right, and the larger 65 style logo.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the major change, and the faster way to see it is they took the Made in Mexico and put it in the back of the headstock too. But
right.
Yeah, but the main thing that changes there for me was the thing I didn't like about Mexican Strats before was they had smaller fret wire. See, so Americans had medium jumbo and the Mexicans ones had smaller fret wire. By 2008 forward, they all use the same size fret wire.
Right.
Now, I heard somebody say they use different grades of fret wire. I've been to both factories, Mexico and American, twice, the American one, once the Mexican one, and I never thought to ask if they were using different spools of wire. So I can't tell you that is a fact. I can only tell you what I saw. But I will tell you this, as of 2008, because it's called a Toyota efficient manufacturing process. That's what Fender went to when the recession was happening to try to fix the costs. So instead of ordering different parts from different suppliers, if they could just standardize the amount of parts coming, you know what I mean?
Right.
So the three-way switches became the same. The potentiometers became the same on those. So you're getting the same pots and the same switch on the American and Mexican one, 2008 forward.
Okay.
The main difference in the finishes is, is the Mexican ones have polyester finishes and the American ones use polyurethane.
Okay.
And their argument is that polyester is a better finish. It's harder. It's better. Yeah, it's harder and it's a better quality finish. However, technically, since the accurate finish should be lacquer for aesthetics, the way it looks, polyurethane looks closer to being right. You know what I mean? Because when they make those
polyester is almost too shiny.
Yeah, it looks too perfect. They said that's what gives it that plasticky, not so correct look to the especially to the sunburst and stuff.
Right.
And I'm not going to argue the whole what those coats of paints do to the body or don't do to the body, because I have a Mexican Strat and I love it. And my two favorite Strats I own is my Mexican black Strat and my custom shop.
When the coating difference survives a double-blind scientific test, I'll be convinced. Until that happens, it's all just talk and speculation about I think this and I think that, and what it is I think a lot of times people make a connection to an instrument and they're trying to find out why, and they're like, well, this one had lacquer and that one didn't, and maybe it's just a nicer made instrument, or maybe it's just set up the way you happen to like, or whatever. I've played, and probably the ones that use lacquer are more consistently expensive, so they tend to be consistently nicer. So people who play lacquer guitars say, I don't know, they just seem to sound better. It's like, well, yeah, because they were the higher price point than the polyurethane and polyester guitars.
Right.
So, of course, they're going to sound better.
Well, what's funny is they use the same process to paint the Mexican Strats, the polyester. That's what they use on the high-end Jacksons they make.
Really?
Yeah. Because that's why we asked, because we were confused by that statement. They said it weird to us. They were talking about the polyester finishes and versus polyurethane. Then later in the factory, when they were doing the Jackson custom shop stuff, they were like, oh, we use polyester because it's a great finish. And I go, wait a minute. isn't that the finish you said it's on the Mexican Strats? And they said, yeah. And I go, and then that's when they explained, oh yeah, well, it's a good finish. It's not, we don't put it on the Mexican Strats because it's, you know, it's
yeah, but on the Jackson, it would make sense because it's supposed to be like a mirror.
Yeah. In fact, what they told us, which is a cool little story. They said when they acquired Jackson in 2002, I guess they had to get Grover back over, you know. Dude, Grover back. Anyways, Grover Jackson been over.
Red Rover, send Grover back over.
Because talk about a cool story. This is in the custom shop, Jackson. The problem they had was they couldn't get the black right. They said Jackson's black was like glass, and no matter what they did, they couldn't get it right.
I even think that was a clear coating issue, right?
Who knows? Buffing process. I mean,
buffing, right? Who knows?
Who knows? You know.
Yeah. I came so close to pulling the trigger on a Jackson USA, and it sold out before I could do it. The guy was giving it away. It was an $849.
Well, right after the recession, there was the 80s guitars were all dirt cheap.
Right.
And
yeah, that was probably about right.
Yep.
Yep. So anything with a pointy headstock is a tough sell, apparently, but I'm fine with it.
Yep.
I'm good. I'll use it.
Well, you know, for me, you know,
cans.
You know what it is for me. You know, when you work on guitars all the time, you know, just like if you work on anything, whenever you do anything for a living, you cringe when you see certain things, and you go, "Oh, good." When you see other things,
right?
Old Jacksons and stuff, when they would come in for setups, I was always like, "Oh, cool, this will be easy." You know what I mean? Yeah, because they were just built well, and the fretwork was usually done really well. You're not going to have any issues. The only time you have issues if they wore divots in the frets, but even then, you know, that was easy to take care of.
Sure, little level and crown, you're all set.
Yeah, you know, I tell people today, Epiphone makes great stuff, but to me, when I see Epiphone, when I talk about Epiphone as a product, a guitar, I like it. Repairing it, I feel like it's just I throw the dice what I'm going to get every time. You know, am I going to get the really? Because I've played Epiphones that are just some of the best playing guitars I've ever played, and I've played Epiphones where you can't intonate them, you can't get the frets to stop buzzing. I mean, and they're not exclusive on this problem, but there are certain brands.
You can fix it, but you have to wonder how much time and money. Well, really, time, which translates to money. Are you going to put into it and go back to the guy and say, "Well, I've got 3 hours getting this thing right"?
Yes,
you know. You know, 3 or 4 hours work on this thing. So, and you know, it's a very inexpensive guitar. So, you know, we were talking about the other day, you know, do you take a, you know, like a Harley Benton, right? Do you take $150 guitar and put $300 bare knuckle pickups into it, right? It starts to get into a funny place where you're like, wait a second. I paid $150 for the guitar, and now I'm paying $300 for the pickups.
Yeah,
it starts to get into a weird place. When you get on low guitars like that, they really do start to become disposable at some point.
Well, you know what's nice though is I can tell you from the successes I've seen people do. One thing I've always found interesting is there are certain players out there that like a certain style of guitar. So they always play Tellys, or they always play Les Pauls, they always play Fenders, different brands, but in those categories, right? And what's great is if you're into Tellys, let's say use a Telly as a good example. Like, I'm into Tellys, and I buy a Harley Benton Telly, or I buy you know, what's the brand, Lucky Kings, or whatever they keep putting on Facebook, right? Hard Luck Kings, right? All these inexpensive type brands out there, guitars you can buy for $100 to $200. Okay.
Right.
To me, if you go with the strategy of if your brain likes that one style guitar, I say mod them up like crazy, because here's why. You'll learn a lot from them, but most of the parts, just keep the original parts. I always tell people, just get your parts back. If you, put the old parts back. You'll never get that money back for those parts.
No, you're better off to hold on to the parts and sell them. That's what made the Stratosphere a huge company.
Yes,
by ripping apart guitars and selling out the parts individually. You're much better to do that, because when they're together, they're for some. It's almost like when you do a bathroom over in your house. It's like certain things you'll get the return on, other things you just won't. And you know, you'll drop $50,000 on a bathroom, and your home value will go up $10,000, if that, because people expect a nice bathroom. So, so you can sink crazy money into something, and people will say, well, I'm not going to pay this extra for it because I expect this level of quality in it. So you're better off to pull those parts out. I absolutely agree. Save the old parts. In fact, when I had the Ibanez Les Paul, I bought a couple of summers ago, bought it like the weekend of 4th of July. The city was empty. I went downtown. I met a guy in like the South End, and I bought the guitar for like I think I paid $330 for it. He wanted $350. I offered him $320. He goes, how about $330? I go, done. I mean, what am I going to argue about $10 or whatever? And but I always ask for 10% off, like right off the top. Why not? Right. So he was like, sure. So we do it. I have the guitar for a couple of years, and then I got the new one, which needed the new hardware and the new electronics, but whatever. But the body was much better, so I didn't mind getting rid of the old one. Before I got rid of it, I pulled out the Seymour Duncan pickups that were in there, and I just threw a couple of junker pickups in it. And I said in the ad, these pickups squeal. They're not, these are terrible old pickups. They're in like a no-name brand. I don't know what to tell you. And a guy paid me $350 for the guitar. And when he showed up, I said, I can't reiterate enough how bad these pickups are and how bad they're going to squeal. And he's like, that's my style. I'm into the whole noise thing. Like the squealier, the better. He goes, I almost died when I saw your ad. He goes, because now I don't have to replace the pickups. And so you never know. Right? It's like pull the pickups out. If you really like the pickups in something, you really like the hard, pull it out before you sell it. You never see. I thought it was going to be a tough sell because I pulled those Duncans out, but it found a buyer, no problem at all.
The Shaman Blues is here, and he said, "Hey, what do you think of the Diamond Renegade guitar?" I haven't played it. I don't think you have. I don't
think I played the what does the Renegade look like?
That's the one that looks like kind of like a really flat SG.
Okay, yeah. I did play it at Tone King's house.
Oh,
he bought a Renegade, right? A black one with the stripes. It was really nice. It is a thinner body, but it's a little larger, right? It's a larger, but slightly larger, top to bottom, and I think top to side to side, than an SG, but thinner, without a doubt. The neck was almost identical to the one on my Hailfire. I don't know that there's a big difference in neck profile. Right. So I don't know if that's any different, but it was great. It was a nice guitar. Again, I didn't play it for all that long. The guitar that I played there that I really played for the most amount of time was his new Kiesel, his green one, the lime green one there. Right. And I was really impressed with that. I thought that was nice. And I played it as a Acacia when I was there too. And that was really nice too. But a Tank, boy, that guitar was heavy. I mean, compared to the other two guitars, which were a lot lighter, that Acacia guitar was like a Les Paul, and the other two were more like, vintage Strats, like in terms of weight. There was a good 2-pound difference between the instruments easily with the Acacia versus the other two guitars. But they're all nice. But I did play that. I did play that Diamond now that I think about it. Yeah.
When people ask me about Diamond, I think I said this on another live show, so I'll say it again today. They come from the World manufacturer. There's two main manufacturers in Korea. One's called World, and the other one's something else, but it's the W2.
Probably Samick.
No, and it's not Samick, because Samic's moved their stuff to Indonesia. So basically, there's World, and they make like Chapman, PRS, Diamond,
Schecter.
Schecter, some of the LTD stuff. Then you have the other factory in Korea, and they make like Reverend. They make Fret King. I think they make Gretsch. Gretsch is in one of the sides. But what I say is when people ask me like, what do you think of Chapman? When I review Chapman, you're like, do you review Chapman? I was just thinking about this the other day. I think I'm going to review the new Chapman Indonesian guitar. I'm going to get one of those and review it. And the reason is I come up with this theory. So tell me what you think, Pixie. Say how crazy it is.
All right.
When people ask me like, what do I think of Schecter? What do I think of PRS SE? What do I think of Chapman? What do I think of Diamond? And I go, well, yeah, I like these guitars. But when they ask me about the quality of them, I go, well, you understand, to me, they're the same. To me, they're no different than asking me when I say, oh, yeah, I like American Strat. And they go, well, what do you think of American Tellies? And I go, well, they're good too. Well, what do you think of American Jazzmaster? Well, You understand, quality-wise, they're all the same. They're coming from the same place.
Exactly.
So, I mean, to me, I prefer a Strat over a Jazzmaster the way it looks. Maybe I prefer a Schecter over a PRS-SE in the way that it looks. But quality, I've just noticed that factory puts out a certain level of quality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, it's a huge factory. It's a very large factory.
Yeah.
They have their processes down. Right. This is a company it's a seasoned company. They've been in business for many, many years. They make many, many guitars, and they have their processes down.
Yes.
And, you're going to get a very consistent quality out of the factory. That's why people go to them. And spend millions of dollars like PRS to pump out thousands and thousands of guitars with their brand name on it, because they can fulfill the order. Like anyone, I'm sure, like I had some friends who were going to China, and they were going to have guitars built for them with their own brand on it. And they got some stuff from some Vietnamese dealers. They were like, well, we can really beat those prices. We're really more competitive than the Chinese makers right now because of, labor costs. So they were like, great. And they got a couple of prototypes. They were garbage.
Yeah.
He's like, we went running back to China. We didn't care that we were paying more. They had their factory processes down, and they pushed out a much more consistent instrument. He said, we could see from the Vietnamese ones, we were going to have all kinds of warranty problems. He said, and that's no place to be. You want to have a guitar that when you get it out, you're not making the guitar. All you're doing is warrantying it. He goes, so you've got to make sure that you're warrantying a decent instrument. So, these, like you say, the quality is going to be, it should be extremely consistent from instrument to instrument and even brand to brand.
Yeah.
Because it is in the same factory, and, they do runs. I'm sure they do a big PRS run, and they do big Chapman runs, and they do big Schecter runs, and it's all, they do a run at a time, and they they have like all the check boxes to make sure that they're very consistent. And I agree.
You brought up Vietnamese guitars. I got a funny story about that. Do you know there's a brand of guitars called Vintage Guitars, and they make like
Vintage. Yeah. Okay, I always confuse them with Vantage.
Yes. And so when I was talking to Vintage Guitars, they were explaining that they were having trouble with the Vietnamese factory where they're making their guitars. And one of the things that they did is their guitars all come relicked. They're all come beat up, rusted. And that's a good move because you don't have to worry about the QA, because anything that they got wrong is just going to look like it's part of that aesthetic of the guitar.
Right. Yeah, I know, that's the greatest thing about relics. You can never there's never a second sale. There's never a dinged sale. There's never a floor or a demo sale. It's like, oh no, that's so, you paid extra for that, buddy.
So when I was talking to him, I said, that's genius. If that's what you meant to do, that your guitars coming out of Vietnam, which are really dicey, are all jacked up. And they said, yeah, even with that in play, we're still having problems. We have to move to China. And Vietnam doesn't seem to have its issue. My personal experience was Randall used to make their amps in Vietnam, and we used to have problems with the fact that all the amps came with Celestion speakers, and they would put the Celestion equipped sticker on the front of the grill. And we go to peel it off, and because the sticky didn't work, they used like Elmer's glue and glued the labels on the grills. And so I mean, like you said, a good factory with a good experience makes good product. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, the thing is if they don't, the market usually corrects it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They tend not to last.
So at least we hope.
Yeah. Well, doesn't explain Gibson now, does it?
Yeah.
Did you see they closed Cakewalk? They shut Cakewalk down.
No, I didn't see that.
So Cakewalk is a little personal to me because they're from Watertown, Massachusetts. That's only a few towns over from me. And they were sort of like the local software company, 12-Tone Systems. Right? So 12-Tone Systems has been around since the late 80s. The guy started in like 87, I want to say. And they eventually changed. What wound up happening was they got some funding from Roland. because Roland had their whole, I think it's Eridol, right? Their Addario. These are like sort of shelf MIDI units that could do like their general MIDI units, and they were sort of tying all in. And so I think Gibson bought in, not Gibson, Roland bought into them maybe in '08 or something like that. Anyway, the guy retires in 2012 after a 25-year run. He decides to leave. So he leaves, and Roland sells out to Gibson the following year, 2013. Gibson takes over. And right after that, they switched to a subscription model for the software. And that was pretty much the last time I updated. I think they backed off from that, but to be honest, I never went back and checked. Between Reaper, you know, and other pieces of software on the market, I didn't really feel the need. Really, Reaper is what killed them for me, because Reaper was so much cheaper, and I didn't have to buy into a big software contract, you know. And so, you know, I have Sonar X3. That's the last one I have. That's probably from 2012. It was the last one under that guy. So a week ago today, Gibson announced that they're no longer developing. It was sort of cryptic, but basically they shuttered the place down. They're like, well, we're going to be doing updates. So if you bought and they seemingly are still selling the software. They didn't say that they're not, but as I understood it, there's no more product development. I don't think they're going to be producing any more updates except for maybe security or bug fix updates. Who knows? Again, they didn't handle it very well, but it seems to me that Cakewalk is dead, and that would suck, because you know, a company that's been around, a software company of all things,
right?
You know, would be around for like the last 25, really now the last 30 years. So 25 years of growth, and then 5 years dead.
Yeah, they're a mess, you know, and I hate dog piling on top of, you know, everything else out there.
It's like a pig pile.
Yeah. Like, you know, but you're sitting there and I'm like, you know, and it is, we're guitar players, so this is what we talk about, right? We talk about the companies and stuff, and Gibson is a company that is just seems like it's made a lot of mistakes, you know what I mean? And it seems to continue to make mistakes. And it'll be interesting, you know. The real question for me, which somebody brought up on a live show a couple weeks ago, was what happens if companies like Gibson or Marshall, like, well, we'll just talk about Gibson. What happens if they go away, right? And we talk about the fact that somebody will buy them and they'll keep Gibson. But what somebody said was, who would replace them? And my thought was, well, no one company would replace them. 20 brands would replace them.
Yeah, I don't know that any one brand would replace Gibson. I'm trying to think of probably PRS, right? They're the closest sort of solid.
But they're not the right vibe.
Yeah, you're right.
Could, you know, because they physically make guitars. They're great guitars.
Well, I'm just saying they're USA made. They're a heavier, solid body style. They have a lot of stop tailpiece offerings, you know, compared to, say, Fender, where, you know, it's mainly the telly. You get it by guitar, right? The telly is the stop tailpiece, and the Fender is, and the Strat isn't. So I don't know who would fill that void. Certainly, it would probably be, like you said, an amalgamation of several different companies. I can't see the Gibson brand going anywhere. No. The only way Gibson would go away is if there was like a really heinous scandal attached to it, like a pedophile scandal or something. Like, but what would it take to really soil the brand where people wouldn't want to be caught dead playing it, right? What would kill it? And it would take a lot, just because they've been around for so long. I think anything, if they went under, the brand would just be sold, and probably to Fender, quite frankly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, would Fender dare even? Well, it depends on how much they could get it for. I mean, if it's at auction and you can get that brand for short money, I'm sure there'd be investors out there trying to buy it. But what would probably happen is that someone outside of the industry would buy it because they're an investor. Yeah. And then the shitstorm proceeds. Because the first thing they do is try to secure up like international manufacturing to right. And then it just goes to, and then the next thing you know, Gibson becomes what Kramer became.
Gone.
And right when Kramer was in those really bad years where they were just complete horrible imports. There was a good probably 5-year or 8-year run where they were really bad. Just basically an import name until Gibson bought them and tried to revive it.
Well, it's funny to me on a side note, I look at the brands that seem to be growing right now, and there's an argument out there that a lot of the brands that are growing have decided to make themselves have a social presence. And this is an argument, and I think it's interesting. The argument is, in a world where everybody can interact with the companies they like to be part of, right? I don't know if you ever heard this term before. Everybody knows the term lifestyle branding, and there's another term, it's called tattoo branding. It's, in other words, like Ford, Chevy, the Superman logo, things that people tattoo on their body. Those are brands, and they tattoo them on their body, right? And so Gibson and Fender are considered tattoo brands. Somebody tattoos a Strat on their arm, you don't think that's strange.
Like my Wendy's tattoo.
Yeah. Do you have a Wendy's tattoo, or is it?
I don't have a single tattoo. Please, I cry when my hair's cut, let alone a tattoo.
So I lost my train of thought. No, the point is tattoo branding. So in other words, that people identify with the brand and they want to be part of it. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is,
they're so faithful.
Yes.
Right. It's really a brand faith that they're really, it's like, you must have seen them out there, right? Because they show up on Facebook all the time. The guy who shows up to a job and he says, all right, well, here's your truck. And the guy's like, I'm not driving that. He goes, what? He goes, yeah, I can't drive a Chevy.
Right.
Because he's a Ford guy. And he's like, yeah, well, if you're working for us, you're driving the Chevy. He's like, yeah, can't take the job. It's like, are you insane?
So here's an interesting thing. And Tom, I'm gonna read a comment and then I want to add to it. So Thomas K said, Gibson will always be around just like Coca-Cola. Interesting. I have some interesting information for you, for Thomas. So I don't know if you know it or not, but Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they're not doing so great. They're living on other brands right now. Like Budweiser, is buying up all the craft breweries across the country. You know what I mean? Because as the customers, kids are not drinking soda like they used to. They're drinking. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's better. The sports energy drinks are more popular. The vitamin waters, the bottled waters.
That's because they bought them.
Yeah, they bought them. Right, they bought Coca-Cola. But that's the irony of it. Coca-Cola and those guys, they're buying these energy drinks. They're buying these other drinks. But the point is at some point they bought them because they realized that their brands were not growing at the rate that they used to grow. Now, we're not talking about
Fried Chicken tried to rebrand themselves KFC because they didn't like the word fried so prominently displayed in their name, despite they never really reformulated their product.
Right.
But they saw the writing on the wall in terms of like Dunkin' Donuts up here is going through that right now. They don't like the word donut in their name. So they're floating out Dunkin'. and they changed their logo from a bitten donut to a cup of coffee about 10 or 15 years ago in an effort to get away from donuts and to focus more on the coffee, because coffee is healthier in most people.
Well, I don't think it's healthier, but
certainly than donuts, right? That's their argument. So they've been floating Dunkins, which everyone around here laughed at because it's Dunks. No one calls it Dunkins. It's like, if you ever said Dunkins, it'd be like, oh, where are you from? Right? It's like you're not from around here, are you? So, I know what you're saying. Like the branding, it's so huge. And Gibson is, I think there's an argument to be made that they're a tattoo brand, right? That they're to that level.
So here's
people are militant about them.
Well, here's an interesting point. So this is something I was discussing. This is the things I talk about on Thanksgiving, apparently. We were talking about guitars. So something interesting that I thought about, Gibson is considered itself, they were trying to market the brand lifestyle concept. That was one of their marketing tools they were doing in the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, they wanted to branch out from guitars, which they saw, phones going. They're like, well, we'll do technology. We'll get a software company. We'll get into electronics. What they didn't realize is that the margins in electronics companies are razor thin. Yeah. It's not, not everybody's Apple.
Yeah.
who can get these huge margins. Everyone else survives on much thinner margins.
Yeah.
And they were healthy when they were only a guitar company.
Yeah.
It's really these other companies are sort of dragging them down because they just can't, from what I can see, do as the numbers that probably Gibson thought that they might do it. They wanted to do headphones and, you know, they wanted to do a branch out into all this other stuff. They were coming out with an app under the Cakewalk brand. Is that shelved now?
Yeah.
Right? They were just about to announce an iOS app. Is that gone now? I mean, who knows? It's just, oh, Gibson.
Yeah, we'll have to see. You know, so something so what made me Random Leb said Gibson is in my mind is an old man's guitar. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think.
But is
cool.
the electric guitar in general an old man's game?
Could be. I don't want to bum myself out right now, so we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I will say this.
You can get a chair and a rope.
Yeah. Mario's like, can you imagine if Apple ends up buying Gibson?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny. So this is the part I was going to tell you, the funny part that I looked up yesterday that made me laugh. I was looking up Gibson's social media, right?
Yeah.
So how big do you think their YouTube channel is?
Well, you know, I'd be bummed if they had fewer subscribers than me.
No. Yeah, they have more, but not much. Not much more.
Like, please. It's like I would think they'd have over 100,000 or even 250,000, really.
They have about 109,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
And like 21 million views in the last 10 years. Which is really good, but you know, when you look at some other companies that are much smaller than them, they've achieved those same numbers. So It's just interesting. Okay, so we're gonna we went a little over, but there's 653 of us hanging out. So
man,
yeah, you guys, no one is, speaking of guitars, no one's out there buying guitars right now. They're watching us and talking to us.
Well, we can only hope they bought a few online while during the show. Yes.
Anyone gonna buy any cool guitars over the weekend? Anyone got any? I went on Sweetwater, and I was, funny enough, last night I was looking at Charvels.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. You know
what
how
are you thinking?
it is.
Maybe a San Dimas, maybe a SoCal.
You know, I had the San Dimas and I got rid of it, and the reason there was no good reason. I want a SoCal. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I was looking at SoCal, but believe it or not, if the gear, I don't know, powers that be were trying to keep me under bay because it's out of stock. So I went there, and the one I wanted was out of stock. So it seems like everything I wanted was out of stock. I'm like, okay, good. That's good. Maybe I don't need anything. So
I know sometimes I'm relieved.
Yeah.
Like, oh, thank God. It's like, because I can't help myself.
Okay, so let's try one more question, and then we'll call it. Trying to see somebody's saying, please
hi to Terry Bear, hi to Watchman for you. A couple of regulars.
Oh yeah. Well, Terry Bear's a moderator here. Is he a moderator for your channel too?
He is.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Thank you, Terry Bear.
Yes.
So I always love it. I'm like, one last question, and then they just tell us statements. I'm like, oh.
Right. And then it's, my cat's breath smells like cat food. It's like, okay, do you have a question?
Here's an interesting thing. So I want to say Avitas. Avitas says, what year would you say was the last year for good quality control at Gibson? Les Paul's, and he's like 2006-ish.
What's the year I own?
What's the year I own? What I'll let Pixie answer, and I'll answer real fast. For me, they've always been dodgy. I make jokes all the time. People would bring in and let me work on these 70s era Les Pauls, 60 era Les Pauls, vintage Les Pauls, right? Everything I could find wrong with new ones, I found wrong with old ones. In fact, if anything, my argument is it's a double-edged sword. You could argue that Gibson hasn't changed anything so that they can keep the formula the same, but because they didn't change anything, the issues that you get with their factory is the same. When you go to the Gibson factory and you watch how they make guitars, and a lot of people walk out of that factory and they're impressed. I was never impressed with their factory because when you see Music Man's factory, when you see Paul Reed Smith's factory, you see Framis's factory, yeah, you could say, yeah, that's old world craftsmanship at Gibson. The problem though is it doesn't really vibe like old world craftsmanship. It vibes like if everybody's worked for somebody that's like this. I've worked for people where they're cheapskates. They're a cheap ass and they wouldn't fix anything. and your job was made twice as hard every day because the owner
says wash the front window and he tears off one paper towel
right
and hands it to you and says, here it is, make it work.
Yeah. And that's the vibe I got. This process was kept in place not because it was the right way or it's this old tradition, because you can't go, okay, we're going to start CNCing guitars right, instead of hand guiding them, and then go, but we're still going to do this stuff by hand. When I'm there going, well, I know that machine that would do that for you is $480K. That's why you didn't do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so my point to that is I don't think there's a good year for Gibson. What I think now is that Gibson, I always call it asking forgiveness. No business is perfect. And businesses that live in our world, unlike Apple, who can make a very standard product every time, and a tablet is a very standard product every time. Okay. Guitars are not standard. They're all over the place. And I don't care how good you are. I don't even care if you're like your PRS or your Ibanez or your Framis and you're like, we've mastered this. The truth is there's issues there. I got a PRS cabinet the other day. It's down there. It had glue on it. You know what I mean? So there's mistakes that happen out there. But what happens is what you want to build a rapport with your customer base that says, okay, I've bought some other products. There's a consistency there. This is a mistake. I don't, you know what I mean? And you work with the customer base. Gibson that's where I think they failed. They failed to build a community because, in other words, they're so easy to hate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not that they're not making good guitars anymore. It's just we're less forgiving because they haven't done anything else other than make those guitars.
Even when you go on their own website, there's a lot of hate in the comments when they come out with new guitars. They're like, what the hell is this? And blah, blah, blah. And you're too expensive. And, it's like they never address any of that, and sometimes people would say that you can't win. Don't engage, I get it. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's like they don't have the lovey-huggy community that other brands seem to have.
And it's not.
I mean, if you go to the Les Paul forums, a lot of it's griping, right?
Well, and it's not new. I read a guitar. I read a guitar magazine. Back when there was guitar magazines. I opened it up, and there was an interview with Def Leppard, and let's see the guitar players. You got Phil Collin. Who's the other guy?
Vivian Campbell for a while.
Vivian Campbell. Okay.
Yeah.
So Vivian Campbell, they asked him what gear he used. Somebody could maybe know what I'm talking about. They asked him what he was using, and he says, well, I'm using Marshalls and Gibsons, but I hate to say that because I hate to give any effing credit to Gibson because I hate them so much, and they treat their artists like crap. This is like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and he goes, so I just use my old Gibson Les Pauls. I wouldn't make that big deal of that statement, but the only reason it's in my mind fresh is because all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's just one more thing I go, oh, yeah, I remember that. So that was problems back then. So,
Yeah. Gibson is sort of, look, that's just the way it is. Take it or leave it. And the problem is a lot of people are leaving it.
Yeah. So, what I'm curious about, and then we'll end with this note. What I'm curious about is I'm curious to see what it's actually doing to them. I know we're talking about it, and I know they're out there making reactions, but I don't know about you. I went on Reverb. I went on eBay. I can't go on Craigslist because it's too vast, but Reverb and eBay. And if you go on Reverb and eBay and type in like Gibson used, and I went on guitarcenter.com too, but you go in there and you go, I'll use Reverb because I can tell you what I saw was very consistent across all three of those used entities. You go on Reverb and type in Gibson Les Paul Standard and then hit used, and there was like 1,500 of them for sale. Okay, that's not a lot.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like a lot, 1,500, but they make more than that a month. So that means if they were to stop making guitars tomorrow, theory-wise, Reverb's used inventory could be exhausted in a month to 2 months. You know what I mean? If we so my point is, it looks like people are still buying Gibsons. You know what I mean? It does. I don't see, and the reason I'll be honest, the reason I was looking was when you hear all this stuff, this to me as a guitar collector is kind of like the stock market. Once I heard, oh, Gibson's doing horrible, everybody hates Gibsons. Well, let's see how cheap I can buy a Les Paul. You know what I mean? I was looking for a standard for $1,200, and they ain't a $1,200 standard out there to be sold. So even though we talk about them, and I don't mean, and people go, yeah, but that's old ones. I'm like, no, you can't buy a 2017 Les Paul standard for dirt cheap. So I don't think they're that part is the guitar part is the problem. It's everything else.
Yeah, there's still a demand for the product because it's an iconic look. So they don't take the hit like other brands take, right? In terms of like resale value. You know, they tend to hold their value because it's a classic design. And people are willing to, you know, but I mean, every guitar takes a hit when you after you get it new. But it's not like you're buying it for $19.99 and you're lucky to get $9.99 for it. You can probably get it for $19.99 and get $1,500, you know, $1,400 all day long, and not take that big of a hit like you would with maybe some other brands.
So last question, and it's going to be from me to you. So what guitar do you think sticks in your head as having the best resale value? And I'm not holding it to you firmly, just generally speaking, with your experience of collecting guitars, what guitars do you feel like when you buy, you're like, I'll get most of this back?
If I buy it used?
Sure.
If I buy it used, always, without a doubt, lower end guitars.
Yeah.
Because there's a certain bottom to the market. And as long as I'm around that bottom, I will always get that money back. And I won't have to worry too much. So usually when I get a guitar for under $500, I can get what I paid for it, or maybe even a little bit more than I paid for it back if I'm savvy enough when I buy it. Like a classic example is that Ibanez Les Paul. You know, I bought that for $330. I pulled the pickups out and resold it for $350 and kept the vintage Seymour Duncan, you know, pickups wound by Lydia Daniels and Juarez, right? Yeah,
Abigail Yabarez, you mean?
No. The other one. She's from Fender. From Duncan there. Oh God, it's on the tip. Someone will write in the MJ.
Oh, MJ. Yeah.
Juarez is the last name, but I can't think of M.
Yes.
Anyway, you know, Marika.
Yeah. No, it's not Marika.
It's something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, for me, you know, it is for me, the guitars that to me always in my head hold the most value, Mexican-made Strats and Tellys.
Yeah. So I was just about to say my Mexi Strat, I got just about what I paid for it. No problem at all. Sold it in like a day off of Craigslist. The Squires, you can pretty much always get.
If you buy a Squire used, you're safe.
If you buy a Squire used, you're totally safe.
Yeah, they take the hit. They take that hit, but then they don't seem to take any more hits after that.
Yeah. You know, I bought that Squire Telly for $199. I could sell it for $200 all day long. In fact, they're really selling a little bit more now. We're around $275, $300 now because there's not as many on the market as there was a couple of years ago. So I always think the biggest hit you're going to take is on a brand new expensive guitar. That's going to be it's like if you went out and bought a brand new expensive car. It's really the same thing. The second those wheels hit the pavement, you're down 30%.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think of this. I've had companies, I've talked to, and I say, yeah, I'm interested. You know, we're talking about guitars, for reviews and stuff, and they're like, hey, we'll sell you a guitar for cost, and they'll give me the number, and I've just went and bought it used because I can get it for that price used. Or
well, that's the problem with the PRS because they're like, well, yeah, we can give you an artist discount,
Yeah.
But it's like a $4,000 guitar for
Yeah.
$2,500. It's like, yeah, but I could probably get that same guitar, maybe not the 4,000, but I could get like the 3,500 for around 1,500.
Yes.
If I looked hard enough. And
those. And here's an interesting thing too on the Mexican Strat thing. Do you know I have a theory that I call it's 5 years. If you buy a new Mexican Strat or Telly, brand new, 5 years from now, when you sell it used, it almost sells for what it was new when you bought it. Because I have all the Fender, I have all the Fender catalogs from '88 forward, and I have all the price lists. And when you go through it, think about it this way. So 10 years ago, you buy a Mexican Strat for $399. Right. Now they're $599. Now you expect to pay used $350.
Right.
So it is interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then sometimes they do. So a couple of years ago, they brought in 6 new colors for the vintage series. I think 3 new 50s colors and 3 new 60s colors, like the canary and the lilac, right? These exclusive colors to Guitar Center. So they come out in late August, early September, right? By late October, early November, maybe early December 1st, or maybe around Black Friday weekend, somewhere around there, they drop them from $7.99 to $5.99. And you can get them for weeks and weeks and weeks, brand new, $5.99 for that. Now, everyone buys them up. 2 or 3 months later, doesn't float your boat anymore. Now you bring it back in the Guitar Center, you trade it in. They started showing up there. Because it wasn't selling at $7.99, they start looking up and say, well, wait a second, we were selling those for $5.99. So we can't give you based on the $7.99 retail. So we're going to give you X amount on a trade-in or on a sale. You could have got those $3.99, $4.49. They've jumped up since then. But it really goes to show you the supply and demand and where, like those weren't selling. And so boom, $200 price drop right there at the store, and then people trade them in, another $150 to $200 price drop right there. Oh, did we lose Phil? Phil, where'd you go, buddy? He froze for a second. I think we're still live. Still live there, dudes? He froze for a second. Now I don't see him. Oh, there he is.
Yep.
Yeah.
That gotta love the internet. So I was gonna tell you. There's 2 last interesting questions, and I just can't pass them up.
Okay.
One was Shaman Blues again, and he said, Pixie, have you raised your price limit on buying guitars?
Well, the price limit was always a suggested price, and it's a game you play, right? That's what you want to be at, but that's not necessarily the case. Like, in other words, if you say, okay, I have a $300 price limit, but I'm looking at a Les Paul Standard for $7.99. Oh, well, too bad my price limit is, $300. I can't do this, right? It's like, no, you're like, I know what the market is. I know that $7.99 is an insane deal on that. So of course you would go, it's really about, the reason why I would go for 300 was because you would be surprised. That seemed to be the magic number. So right, that was the price point where you could really get something decent. Like if I set that at $199, it would be a lot harder. But $299 is that magic price point where you can get like my 60s Players Strat with the custom shop pickups. I paid $299 for that. I paid $325 for my 1983 Kramer Pacer, Imperial. Gorgeous guitar, original Floyd Rose on it. So, I mean, I paid, I want to say $299 for my, no less. I paid $260 for my Ibanez Radius. That was like a $799 guitar back in 1988. So, again, these aren't, super, popular guitars right now. And that's probably why they're depressing them. But keeps the price down, but still I could turn around and sell that radius for more than $260 any day of the week, like no problem at all. So I try to go for the 300. That I've really made some scores around there, but sometimes you see a guitar and you're just like, okay, let's do this,
And then the last one was, oh, you there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Make sure nothing froze.
Check 1 2.
Oh, this one was to me. It said, Mike Page said, Phil, what did Gibson sell you guitars for? What does it cost? I bought my Gibson. I bought from Sam Ash, and Sam Ash gave me a 15% off coupon that I asked him to match to the Guitar Center. And then when sales tax was like 9% back then, so I got basically 6% off what I can get it from the internet for. So my problem is, I had the same problem with the store. People at the store would be like, you should contact the company and get them to sell you the thing, dirt cheap. And I would tell my friends, I'm like, yeah, but when I call them, then they want to talk about orders for the store. Like, oh yeah, we'll hook you up. Anyways, let's talk about what you need for your store. You know what I mean? And then that deal could really not be a great deal anymore once you buy into all this other stuff, right?
Right.
And I have the same problem now with YouTube. People go, oh, you should contact this company and tell them, hey, you have this channel, and give you a smoking deal. But I don't want to be beholden to anybody. You know what I mean? I don't want to be like, oh, okay, yeah. And, and you learn fast. I think anything you do in life, you learn fast, hopefully. I learned fast too. Anytime I interacted with certain companies and I thought, hey, let's use some of this YouTube-ness to see what I can get. You know what I mean? Let's see if they'll give me an extra 10 off because I have an audience or I have something I can leverage against that. What I found is they can leverage just as fast against me.
Right.
They'll come back and they'll go, hey, I hope you're enjoying that. And by the way, what we'd like now is, and I'm like, oh, and what do you say no when so I'm actually been gun shy, and I can't really justify and tell you that there's been bad situations. I don't have any bad situations, but it's never occurred to me to call the Gibson marketing team and say, hey,
right.
Yeah, because in my head, there's just no good that can come from that. So another thing too is I've never asked PRS same thing. Like Pixie was saying, I've never gotten the artist deal, and said, hey, give me the artist deal or anything, just because this is product I was. And here's it's easy for me. If you look at my channel, and Pixie could probably say the same thing. If you look at my channel before I monetized it, right? Which for me, I think was June of 2016. I think is when I monetized it. Might have been June of 2015. My channel is just barely 3 years old from the day I created it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's just under 2 years from when I monetized it. If you look at my videos before I was monetized, I was playing the exact same things. I reviewed all the videos I reviewed before I even knew you could even get paid on YouTube. I reviewed the Archon, the Custom 50 by PRS, my Custom 24, EVH stuff, Fender stuff. Everything you see me still playing now is what I was playing then. So a couple Gibsons here and there. So, and Pixie's the same way. Everything you were reviewing back in the day, I see you still reviewing now. Your old Ibanez's, a couple Fenders, a couple Squires. You tend to like what you like, and the dream is that those companies will come to you because they notice you're using it all the time. But that doesn't seem to be. That's not how it's worked for me so far.
Oh yeah, and I doubt Fender is coming to anybody.
No.
Yeah, they're like, okay, where did you chart on Billboard this month? It's like,
yes,
yeah, they seem to be not interested in anybody.
Yeah,
they don't have to. So
yeah, and they don't have to, and it's fine, and so that's how it works. Yeah. So, and well, everybody, we did good today. I think we answered some questions and had some fun. Talked about some gear. Anything you want to say before we go, Steve?
No, it's fun hanging out as always. Looking forward to getting back together again at NAMM.
Yep,
it'll be a good time.
And I'm going to remind, because it's Black Friday and we can shamelessly plug it, and it's because it's a good idea. If you're interested in one of the Dude Know Your Gear shirts, which is I call the mashup shirts, where they mash up two channels, you can check those out.
Like this one right here, Philip.
And how'd you like it? Did you like it?
I did. I did like it. I did like it.
Yeah. When I did it, I was trying to think like, okay, we can replace the regular my fist with your fist. You know what I mean? The Pixie.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and I'm like, well, you got I was gonna call it "What's up, dudes? Know your gear, dudes. Know your gear." You know, right? And I was like,
right.
But dude has had to be on there.
Yeah. Well,
so
no, it works. It works.
So anyway, so you can check out that link down below if you're curious about that. Like I said, it's a limited run. Whether we do 1 or 2 limited runs, if you guys want a second chance at it, we'll do that. But either way, it won't be a long thing. And then other than that, guys, I want to thank you for hanging out with us today on Black Friday, talking gear. There was at one point we were like 660 something people. So that's awesome. And I appreciate you guys hanging out. And Pixie, give them your going out thing.
All right, dudes, as always, thanks for hanging out and rock on.
And I always say know your gear. So we'll see you next Friday.